Welcome. My name is Nicole Naditz, and I'm excited to be able to present this session to you called Going the Distance, Technology, Tools, and Other Aspects of Distance Learning that you can start using right away. First, let's start with some announcements from CLTA. As you know, that April 5th was our virtual mini conference, and this is one of the sessions in that conference. This conference is hosted by the California Language Teachers Association. We highly recommend and we hope that you will consider joining the California Language Teachers Association. You can join at CLTA.net. Membership is only $25 and gives you exclusive access to a digital world language webinar archives, and it also gets you connected with hundreds of language teachers in California. So you can also get a more direct link by going to clta.net/membership. We offer quality professional development year-round and perform legislative advocacy at the local and state levels for issues that are important to world languages, teachers, students, and programs. The summer seminar, which is co-sponsored by the California World Languages Project and the California Language Teachers Association, along with the California Global Education Project, is postponed until 2021, at which time we will have a theme of the California World Languages Standards and Framework, Empowering Global Citizens. Check out your regional affiliates. They are listed on the right-hand side, and many of them offer workshops that can range from 60-minute hands-on sessions to 3-hour workshops, and there are also leadership opportunities available. Visit clta.net in order to find your closest affiliate and contact them. We have a free webinar series for CLTA members. The webinar posted here is just one example of the webinars we offered to our members this year. These are 1-hour webinars designed specifically for world languages teachers. There are 6 of them throughout the school year, all presented by accomplished educators. Our next statewide conference will be March 10th through 14th, 2021 in San Diego, California. The theme is A Mosaic of Multicultural Perspectives, and we hope you'll join us for 1-hour interest sessions, 3-hour workshops, and 6-hour workshops that are aligned with the California World Languages Standards and Frameworks. Today, we are hosting the virtual conference with 4 sessions. This is the 1 o'clock session with me, Nicole Naditz, Technology Tools for Online Instruction today. Let's get started. So we're going to be focusing on how we can go the distance, tools and strategies you can use online now for distance teaching and learning. Okay. You know, the first thing to do if you're facing this situation, and especially if you really never saw yourself as someone who was going to want to be creating or posting lesson content and materials online for your learners, is to stop and breathe. This is new for almost everyone. Students and families understand that this situation did not provide educators with the time or space to become experts at this model of teaching and learning. So don't worry about making mistakes. The mistakes will happen, but in the end, it will be okay, and you will be able to move forward. We're going to share some tips today that are not just about the technology, but about how to design for learning in ways that will be more comfortable, hopefully, to teachers who maybe never saw themselves as people designing in a technology distance learning setting. So where do you start? Well, you start by building community. And one of the ways you can do that is to really use the features of whatever online platform you already have access to through your school. In that online platform, you probably have a way to post information, resources, and even just messages of support and encouragement. If there is one, you can use the discussion board or question feature of your platform to bring in student voices so that they see themselves as part of the community. One of the potential hazards of a distance learning scenario is that students who already felt invisible can truly and literally become invisible. So we really want to do everything we can to draw them into this community, not just as passive observers, but as people who are actively participating in and contributing to that community. So I know that many schools and districts provide Google Classroom as a platform that teachers can use. So I'd like to take a quick tour of 2 necessary sections for Google Classroom. The first thing I'd like to do, give me just a second, I'm going to bring us to one of my Google Classroom discussion threads. Now this is the student view. And as you can see, there was a question posted for my students. These are actually teachers in an online book study that I am facilitating in my district. And the teachers were asked to reply, but they can also reply to each other. And as a result, this community can become an online space where students are interacting with content, with the teacher, and with each other, as you can see on the screen. To set something like that up, you actually have to do 2 things. The first thing you have to do is actually set up the assignment itself so that it is a discussion board. And in Google Classroom, you do that in the classwork section by clicking create and then choosing question. If you want it to be a discussion board, it is important that you note that students can reply to each other, which is the default. And please remember that in Google Classroom, the designers of Google Classroom think everything in teaching is worth 100 points, so you may want to change that. You may also want to note that you can actually differentiate in Google Classroom by selecting which students will receive a particular assignment or resource so that you can provide materials that are appropriate to the needs of all students. But getting back to the discussion board, after you pose your question and perhaps give them some instructions, you can even add a video or another resource for them to refer to as part of the question. You do need to click ask or schedule the post for later. But there is one more very important setting that teachers may not be aware of, especially if you want students to be able to reply to each other. When you are in your classroom, go all the way over to the settings and scroll down. Many teachers have turned off the ability for students to post and comment in the stream because there is a concern about what the students might post there. There are options such as students can only comment or only teachers can post or comment. However, if you do not allow students to both post and comment in the stream, which is essentially the landing page when someone enters Google Classroom, it's kind of like the social media feed. If you don't allow them to post and comment there, then the questions where you wanted them to have a discussion board will not work because they don't have permission to post and comment. So that is a very important aspect of Google Classroom that I wanted to make sure to share with you if you are hoping to use the question feature to provide your learners with a discussion board. So you may be asking yourself, that sounds great, I want to do that, and I want to allow my students to do other things too. Are there other ways that something like Google Classroom can allow students to be more active and participating members in an online community? Well, there are, and they actually have to do with the stream because your students can't create classwork. Only the teacher can do that. But your students, if you allow them to post or comment in the stream, you can encourage them to post appropriate target language, memes, songs, interesting charts or infographics on topics that you all have been learning about. You can encourage them to respond to what you and others have posted, and you can encourage them to ask questions and even respond to questions. All of this allows the students to bring in their voices, and you haven't even used any audio or video tools yet. This is just using one feature of Google Classroom for asking a question and allowing students to post and comment on the stream. But you might be wondering, what about students who post something inappropriate? What do I do if a student posts something bad? And you're right, that is a concern, especially because currently in Google Classroom, It is not possible to moderate what students post in the stream. In other words, whatever they post becomes immediately visible to everybody in that Google Classroom. There are two things that you should know about that could be of assistance. The first thing, actually three things. The first thing is that anything that is posted to the stream is automatically posted with the name of the person who posted it. The second thing to know is that if this is working great for every student in the class except that one student who just can't be appropriate yet in this setting and needs a little bit of time and maybe a conversation around digital citizenship before they can post, you can go to your People tab, scroll down to your students, and find the name of the student who's having trouble, and then go to Actions and choose Mute. When you do that, that means that the student can still submit work, but no one else will see it. The student cannot reply to classmates' work, which means they cannot participate fully in a discussion board, and they cannot comment or post anywhere. By doing so, this gives you and the student time to have a conversation about digital citizenship and how that student can demonstrate the responsibility needed in order to re-earn the privilege of posting and commenting in the stream. The other thing I'd like you to know is that in your settings, because you might be worried about students who are thinking, aha, I'm going to go into the stream at like 1 in the morning, and then I'm going to post something, and then I'm going to delete it, and the teacher will never know. Well, that's not actually true. If you have a concern that someone might have posted something inappropriate for others to see and then deleted it, go to your settings wheel. So let me back out so you can see how I got there. When you're in your Google Classroom, you always land in the stream. You have several pages across the top, but if you keep going all the way to the right, you have a settings gear. Scroll down in your settings gear, and you find a section that is turned off by default, but it says show deleted items. If you turn this back on, it will show you anything that has been posted, but then subsequently deleted. And again, it will be attached to the name of the student who was signed into Google Classroom at the time of the post. So although that does not prevent the student from perhaps making a bad choice, it does allow you to be able to find out what happened and find out who did it. And then you can work alongside the parent or family members and the student in order to help that student have a more appropriate choice. Let's go back to the slide deck now. A couple of logistical tips if you are going to use something like Google Classroom. Many of these really robust tools have both a website and they have apps for mobile devices. It's really important to communicate to your learners and families that if there is an app for whatever platform you are using, and if the students will be connecting primarily on mobile devices, the student should download the app for that tool. Google Classroom is a great example of this. If you try to access Google Classroom using the web on a phone, there will be a lot of issues with functionality and even sometimes where it'll just crash. But if you download the app, you can do almost everything that you could normally do in Google Classroom on the internet, but you do it directly through the app because that is designed to function properly on a mobile device. So with any tool that you are recommending to your learners or using with your learners, remind them that if they are using a mobile device during this distance learning period, that they should, if there is a mobile app, tell them about it and how to get it and make sure that they know to install that. Make sure that they know to install that. I apologize, let me go back because I'm going to repeat that since the closed captioning turns off every time I leave the slide deck. So the logistical tip was to be sure to communicate to students and families if the tools you and your school are using or suggesting for, such as Google Classroom, but even other tools where they might be doing activities. Be sure to tell students and families if the tool has an app and to tell them that if they are going to be using a mobile device, they should definitely use the app rather than trying to get into those tools by going to the internet on their mobile device. The functionality will be much better and there will be much less likelihood of issues such as crashing or failing. I do also have for you in the slide deck, which will be shared with you as you'll see at the end of this presentation, a resource document for Google Classroom. This resource document will give you a lot more information on how to use Google Classroom successfully, and even includes tips to address various issues and questions that people have as they start using Google Classroom. So before we talk about any more technology, let's talk about lesson design, because we want to be sure that we are really thinking about the design of our learning experiences so that we can have a really successful outcome for our learners. And as it turns out, lesson design isn't all about the tech. It still really goes back to designing for learning. We want to leverage technology, but we want to design in a way that we know from our experience and our expertise and the reading and study that we have done will really support learner achievement in the outcomes that we have set for them. So the first thing to think about in lesson design is there's a lot new happening right now. There are a lot of tools being thrown at us because they are bombarding our email accounts with new tools and try this, we're giving you free access to that, try all the things. This is not Pokemon. You don't have to use them all. So start, if you're going to design your own lessons and either present them live or record them for students to watch whenever they would like to, use the tool you are most comfortable with. There is a way for you to record a lesson no matter which of these tools you are picking. You could use PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, or even Prezi, which is an online tool. When you design your lesson, and I do recommend you use a tool such as Google Slides that will let you put your presentation in the order that you want it and really fold in some important design considerations. When you do that, make sure you chunk the content. Break the whole lesson into small parts and build in checks for understanding so that learners have a chance to learn a little bit, process that little bit, try it out, and then make sure that they're doing okay before the next little bit is presented. And if that means making multiple videos, that might be the better way to go. We never know what's going to happen for our learners when they're trying to do this outside of our classrooms where we don't have control over their learning environment. We don't know if they can sit for an hour straight to listen to a lesson. They may have to come back to it. We don't know if they have a quiet place to do this. It may be better to make multiple short videos rather than trying to make one long video. Another reason that might be better is because then if you make a mistake, there isn't as much to re-record. Also, you want to be sure to use the features of whatever your preferred technology tool is for organizing your lesson content. You want to use the tools that are built into it to focus learner attention. This is really important. For example, in any of the tools that I mentioned, you can do what's called animating words and objects so that they appear when you want them to. That's what I've been doing in this Google slide deck. Instead of letting you see everything this slide is going to say, I'm bringing in the information one at a time so that you know what to pay attention to and you're not distracted by seeing everything else all at once. Use color, bold, underline, and so on to further focus their attention on the important information. And then provide visual support for the oral and printed language in your lesson. So I'm going to show you a really easy check for understanding that you can do using a tool like PowerPoint, Keynote, or Google Slides. You can do this if the lesson is live, or you can do this in a recording. So let's imagine that I had a video where I was teaching students the words for several common daily activities. And in this case, in this particular lesson, they ultimately are going to learn to say whether they like to do this activity or whether they do not like to do the activity. But we want to be sure to teach them the words in a way that they understand them. And there's a lot of those words. Most of you as teachers have seen the list of common daily activities that you might learn in a first-year class, and it can be up to 20 words. That's actually too long to present all at once and then do your first check for understanding. So I do a check for understanding after every 3 to 5 words. So if we imagine that this was a video that I had been doing in French, I would actually then, at this slide, I would be speaking in French, and I would tell my students, you're going to pause the video, take a look at the 3 pictures and the 3 words, and decide which picture goes with each word. When you're done, resume the video. And so the students pause the video, they take a quick look, they decide for themselves if they think A is chanter, danser, or manger, if B is chanter, danser, or manger, and if C is chanter, danser, or manger. And I apologize to our deaf and hard of hearing colleagues because it could not correctly understand the French words. So the closed captioning is completely inaccurate for those. So you are going to have them pause, and when they come back and they click to keep playing the video, here's what they see next. A screen that confirms for them that the first photo is the verb to eat, manger, the second photo is the verb to dance, or danser, and the third photo is the verb to sing, or chanter. Now the students know if they're doing okay, or if they need to review that particular segment of the lesson before we add new material. So it's not just about building in the chunk for understanding, it's also about ensuring we provide for our learners a way to know if they are getting it and if they're ready to keep going. Let's look at a quick version of this for a grammatical topic. Now, for our deaf and hard of hearing colleagues, this segment will be in French and the closed captioning will not work correctly. But please do watch the video, and I think you'll see what is happening in the video and what I have designed in order to help learners notice the grammatical feature that I'm trying to highlight and be able to produce it on their own and find out if they're doing it correctly. So do keep in mind that for this particular lesson, the students would already know the words for these daily activities, such as to play a variety of sports, to talk on the phone, to swim, to eat, to sing, to dance, and so on. They also already know how to say whether they like the activities or don't like to do those activities. But now in this short demonstration, we're going to hone in on how to say that I do this activity, and that's it. We're not even going to focus on how to say they don't do it yet, because in French there's a little complication there, so I would save that as a future lesson. The other thing to note about this is that in many cases, when this lesson comes up in our instructional materials, it is presented as something to do with all of the potential subjects of the verb, where you're going to teach the students for all regular verbs. In French, these are ER verbs. In Spanish, these are AR verbs. For example, you're going to teach them how to say, I do it, you do it informally, he or she does it, we do it, you all do it, and they do it. I do not recommend that approach even in a physical classroom, but I definitely don't recommend that approach in distance learning. I'm going to break that huge lesson into much smaller chunks, and we're going to start with the most important subject matter for a novice speaker of language, which is to be able to talk about themselves with confidence using memorized words and phrases. So let's look at this quick demonstration. And remember, they do already know what the activity words mean. So I'm trying to get them to focus on how to say, I do these various activities. Je m'appelle Nicole, j'ai 15 ans et voici mes activités. Je regarde la télé avec ma famille après le dîner. Je travaille pour préparer les classes. Quand je ne travaille pas, je chante, je joue aux jeux vidéo et j'écoute la musique. Classe, attention, jouer aux jeux vidéo, c'est nouveau. Voilà, jouer aux jeux vidéo. Donc, je chante, je joue aux jeux vidéo et j'écoute la musique. Encore, classe, notez la forme et notez la prononciation. Je m'appelle Nicole, j'ai 15 ans et voici mes activités. Je regarde la télé avec ma famille après le dîner. Je travaille pour préparer les classes. Quand je ne travaille pas, je chante, je joue aux jeux vidéo et j'écoute la musique. Classe, vous avez remarqué la lettre E. Regarde, travaille avec E, travaille avec E, chante avec E, joue avec E et j'écoute avec E. Je regarde, je travaille, je chante, je joue et j'écoute. Et la lettre E, chut, on ne prononce pas la lettre E. Alors, classe, à vous. Vous allez arrêter la vidéo et vous allez écrire sur une feuille de papier. Vous allez former des phrases avec « je » pour parler de vos activités. Modèle, jouer au tennis. Vous écrivez « je joue au tennis ». Alors, arrêtez la vidéo, formez des phrases avec étudier, danser, écouter la musique, regarder la télé. Now at this point, they are pausing the video in order to write their sentences. When they come back, here's what happens. Alors, rebonjour classe, voici les réponses. Pour étudier, j'étudie avec E, final. Et pour danser, je danse avec E. Et pour écouter la musique, j'écoute la musique. Et pour regarder la télé, je regarde la télé. So as you can see, the students had an opportunity to focus on the form because of the strategies I used during the presentation to really allow them to see it, but then to bring it back again in a way that emphasized the necessity of putting the letter E at the end. And then they had a chance to try it, and then they had the responses to let them know if they were doing okay. So remember, when you are designing your distance learning experiences, or if you're using content designed by others, you can check for these things. Does the lesson break the content into chunks? Does the lesson provide checks for understanding so that the learners have had a chance to stop, process the chunk, and then try it out? And then do they have the responses or sample responses for the checks for understanding so that learners know that they're getting it? And also remember to use the features of the tool to focus their attention. For example, bringing things in one at a time and using color. So once you have a lesson, you have seen two ways to use just your preferred tools such as Google Slides or PowerPoint or Keynote to build in checks for understanding. But there are also additional tools that you may already be familiar with, and they work in distance learning as well. The link that you will have on this slide deck when you get it will take you to a matrix where you can check a number of tools for formative assessment and know at a glance which features each tool includes, as well as whether or not the tool works in an asynchronous setting, meaning that students, you could design an activity and push it to students to do anytime from any location with internet. And I also included a column to let you know if the tool has an agreement on file with a district in California for student data privacy. In addition, there's another really awesome tool if you are using Google Slides. And I do know that this tool does work for PowerPoint, but the steps for getting it to PowerPoint are a little bit different, and you could look those up online. If you are using Google Slides, there is a great tool called Pear Deck that you can use in order to build in checks for understanding. So because we are no longer able to do this session in a live format, we will not do the live demo that was originally planned. But as you can see here, what would have happened is you would have actually gone to a different website so that it could push the presentation directly to your device in a way that is interactive. And I was able to include a slide. This is already provided by Pear Deck, but I edited the directions. And I would have allowed you to write or type the most important thing you have taken away so far in this webinar. You would write directly on the slide, and then I would be able to review your responses. Here's another type of slide. There is, in the bottom left corner, there's a kind of a turquoise colored dot right where it says students drag the icon. This is a type of slide as well, where you can gauge how students are feeling at a certain point in the lesson by asking them to drag the dot to the person that represents most closely how they are feeling. So how do you add a Pear Deck slide to Google Slides? It's really easy. You will get the Pear Deck add-on first, and I have a resource document linked to this slide deck to help you do that. And you will launch Pear Deck while you're in Google Slides. I highly recommend that while we are in this distance learning scenario, you try the licensed or pro or paid version for 90 days for free. Just say that you would like to try it for 90 days so that you have access to all of the slide templates for distance learning during the shutdown. For example, in the free version, there are very few slide templates that allow students to drag something or draw something for free. There might not be any that allow drawing. Most of them allow typing. But if you get the full version, if you do a trial of the full version, you'll have access to all the slide templates. You choose the template that you want to use from the library, and then you edit it if necessary, the way I changed the instructions. And then you can start the lesson live or use self-paced mode. So I'm going to come out of my full screen presentation. And what I'm going to do is, if you look off to the right-hand side, you can see that I actually have Pear Deck running. And all I have to do is start the lesson in order to run it. And to add a slide is as easy as this. I'm going to add a new slide to my slide deck right now. I'm going to grab something from the template library. They have beginning of lesson, during lesson, end of lesson, critical thinking, social emotional learning. And then they have examples and subject area questions for littles, math, science, social studies, and world languages. Now remember, as world languages teachers, we actually teach everything. So if your class is studying something in the sciences, you might go to the science slides and see if you could use those and just change it to the target language. In any case, once you see a question that you like if you want to put in something at the beginning of a lesson, all you have to do is click on it and it will add it to your slide deck. So it's going to take just a second to add this demo slide because it needs to build it. There it is. And I always like to put in a blank slide as a caution, just so I know I won't lose any of my other content. And you can change any of the text here, oops, to say whatever you would like. So please follow the instructions below. Now, this was a slide to have up when students are coming into your room first thing in the morning in order to tell them what you would like them to do next. This wasn't itself an interactive slide, although it does have one last piece of instructions which say in Pear Deck, answer the question, what was your main takeaway from the homework? And the students will be able to write their response. When you're ready to start your lesson, you literally just click Start Lesson, and then it will guide you through the process of telling the students where they need to go and how they can get into your lesson and participate. And it's that easy. There is also a feature that will work great for distance learning. Sorry, let me go back here. There's also a feature that will work great for distance learning called self-paced mode. So I linked the instructions for that right into our slide deck. Hold on. Let me resume our closed captioning. So for our participants who are deaf or hard of hearing, the closed captioning does turn off when you are no longer presenting full screen. But what you just saw was a quick demo of how easy it is to add a Pear Deck slide to your presentation. And then the start presentation or start lesson button that is in Pear Deck is how you actually present your lesson to your learners. This is really important because most of the time, if you're in Google Slides, you just click present. But if you're in Pear Deck, you need to make sure Pear Deck is open on the right-hand side and then use their start presentation button in order for the interactive slides to work. Okay. And then, as I said, you're going to start the lesson live or use self-paced mode. And I gave you the instructions as a direct link there, but I also do have a hyperlink to a support document that includes the instructions for self-paced mode so that you can get started more confidently with Pear Deck if you would like to try that as a way to build in that pause, process, try out a new skill, or reflect on what you've learned. If you'd like to build that into your lessons during this distance learning experience that we are all having. Let's talk quickly about the modes of communication. It is really important to avoid overwhelming yourself and your students. Start with one tool that your learners can use to practice each mode of communication, because we do have that added challenge. We don't just have skills and knowledge, we have it across modes of communication. And while we are doing distance learning, it's really important that we provide learners with opportunities that are meaningful and aligned to our standards and culturally rich to practice the modes of communication. But that means there's more to consider and more to develop. So for the start of this distance learning experience, I highly recommend you find one tool that you feel like you can work with for each mode. For example, for interpersonal speaking, you might use something like Google Meet, where you can bring students in and have them talk together for a brief time in a live setting. For interpretive reading, you might use a tool like Edgy, which lets you add questions throughout a reading that you either copied and pasted into Edgy or a PDF that you upload to Edgy. It also lets you insert questions, but the really cool feature about Edgy is it allows students to annotate the reading, and if you choose to do so, it allows them to reply to each other's annotations. They can do this by typing, by using emojis, or by recording their voices. These are settings you decide when you set up the activity in Edgy. You might consider Fluent Key for interpretive listening or viewing. There's another great tool that is very highly used in the ASL community called Go React that you might also consider for interpretive viewing. For presentational speaking, there are actually a lot of options, but a few, I would pick one, again, just pick one, would be Flipgrid, Seesaw, and Adobe Spark Video only. Adobe Spark has 3 tools. The video tool has an option for presentational speaking. For presentational writing, it's as simple as using Google Slides if you would like, or Google Docs, but you can also use Adobe Spark Post, Adobe Spark Page, or again, Adobe Spark Video, as long as the students do add written content onto their video. So again, the key here is don't overwhelm yourself or your students. There's a lot happening right now. Pick tools that you can work with, and for now, limit it to maybe one tool for each mode of communication. These are just suggestions. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our presentation for today. So you can get the slides by going to http://bit.ly/n capital D ISTANCE. That will take you directly to the slide deck and everything that is linked in it. In addition, you can reach out to me via email as listed on the screen, and you can also connect with me on Twitter. I wish you all the best, and I really want to thank you for everything you are doing in this time to ensure that our learners are continuing to develop their proficiency and become multilingual, multicultural citizens. You are all true rock stars, and I am so honored to be part of the language community in California. Thank you.